Hey guys, Master Farr here, and welcome back. This time we're taking a look at a figure that I don't think has really gotten a fair shakedown over the years. By that I mean, people have bashed and bruised its reputation beyond all repair. I mean, look at this guy right here. But yeah, this specific figure I feel like has never really gotten the critical review it needed. Like, looking at the good, the bad, and everything in between. That's right, people. Today we are taking a look at the one, the only, the rather infamous Armada hotshot. So stay tuned while we take a look at this SOB on the old gym mat. Starting off with a little bit of a history lesson, Hotshot was released in 2002 in the first wave of Armada, so he's mainly one of the first figures that everyone thinks of. Designed by Aaron Archer, this guy definitely shows a lot of what was going on in Armada, which we will get to later on, but yeah. In alt mode, Hotshot is a yellow sports car in the same vein of something like Bumblebee, who they couldn't use during that time due to copyright complications. Hell, he almost didn't appear in the movies. We're almost supposed to get him in the movies along with Red Alert in animated. You know, he was going to be there too. And while those two eventually did get to be an animated, it's good that we got Bumblebee back. But anyway, in alt mode, Hotshot is a yellow sports car, and very yellow. Like, this is very neon. It's not eye bleeding like some people make you think. It's like, you know, Bumblebee shades, and there's like a very dark blue on the bottom. It almost looks like it's gone black over the years. But yeah, from the front, he looks like pretty serviceable, and he even has a little cool extra features like this right here. His door can actually open like so, and it can go on the same side as well. But taking a look at it from the back, yeah, this is where the problems start coming in. This is the head, the robot head. I can see it. Yeah, also there's no paint back here, which I can take or leave. Headlights are painted, which is nice, and there's a little mechanism right here, which we will get to, don't worry. But yeah, this headpiece right here, this is just lazy design. They couldn't like just make an extra panel to go down over here. But yeah, he also has multiple combiner pieces right there for mini cons, which, taking a look at all three of them right here, Hotshot's alt mode can look like it's been armed up to the teeth and is ready to obliterate any Decepticons coming in his way. Now, taking all those stuff off of Hotshot, he does come with a few accessories like many Armada figures. Those, of course, being his Minicon partner, a missile, and an engine block. We'll start with the smallest one, with that being the engine block and the missile. We'll just put this off to the side for now, and taking a look at the missile, it just goes right here to make an extra hubcap. So this adds to another problem I have with the alt mode, the fact that they didn't retool this area or like mold it to look like the rest. So, you know, now it looks like, hey, he's got a missile there, or it looks like some sort of redneck patch job. As for the engine block, it's just a useless brick. It's painted well enough, I guess, and hell, if you want to really dig for something to talk about with this piece, it is blast effect compatible for those of you who really care about hell. And also it can stick in here, which is neat. But yeah, this piece can kind of work as a minicon. You can put here, here, or here. But the main reason that this piece exists is, well, a couple of reasons. We'll get to that in a few seconds. But it's to activate a gimmick in this mode. Just putting it right here where the engine would go. You get an engine block, and just pushing down. This mechanism usually doesn't work, but just pushing it down will give the alt mode saw blades. Yeah. The saw blades are decently sculpted. Definitely look like saw blades. Don't know how practical it would be for a sports car to have saw blades, but okay. And just to complete how ridiculous this looks, let's just bring in Jolt. And just put him right here. You can flip this down and yeah, while it does cover the back of the head, for a turbo mode, as the instructions refer to it, this is pretty dumb. I mean, there's silly, and then there's just dumb. This is dumb. I mean, especially compared to Cyclonus, as we take a look at him. His Minicon incorporation in alt mode is really clever, as just taking Crumple Zone right here and sticking him inside like so. You get a new cockpit, and it really just makes it look more intimidating. Hell, there's even a little mechanism at the bottom that lets this turret move. But yeah, this is way better than whatever the hell this is supposed to be. And the fact that both of these figures came out in Wave 1, it definitely seems they put some priorities on other figures. Anyway, getting him off to the side, let's take a look at Jolt. Now, moving on to Jolt, I can definitely say this guy's a bit more going on with him than Hotshot, and even more than most minicons. He's your standard helicopter in this mode, mainly just red. And hell, he's not even that big. I mean, just bring in a Siege Micromaster. You can see they're more or less the exact same size, just a little different. Though this one's slightly lighter than this one, mainly due to the rotor. Speaking of, he does have a couple gimmicks in this mode, which is impressive for a little guy like this. The first one being his rotor, which doesn't really work. It's kind of a little too heavy, and his doesn't really stick together that well because of transformation. His arms are sticking out right here, but I'm not really going to complain considering it's a minicon. I mean, that's like complaining about a gravity bot. There's only so much you can say without sounding pathetic. But anyway, one more thing you can do, and I really like this part, is you take the engine block from earlier and you can stick it into these two tabs right here, and yeah, now he's mounted with something. But yeah, it's actually pretty cool, and it's a nice little touch. I like it when minicons do this. Yeah, but taking it off for some size comparisons, here he is next to Hotshot, Core Class Starscream, and Crumple Zone. But yeah, with all that being said, overall in copter mode, Jolt's pretty cool. On to robot mode. And in robot mode, Jolt really is kind of cool looking, I'll be honest. Just bringing him up close, there's a lot of power glide inspiration to him, especially with that head sculpt. There's not much color breakup though, but again, for a figure this size and what it is, it's acceptable. He has some decent articulation for a minicon too, mainly ball joints in the shoulders, no elbows, and his legs can come apart, and he has knees too, and it can go back this far and front this far, but you really don't want to do it because he's very top heavy. So yeah, what you really have to do is just break his knees like that and make him stand like a Micromaster. But hey, he's still pretty cool, don't get me wrong. And one really cool thing I like about this figure that you can do that I only just recently noticed is bringing in his engine block. Right here, there's a little groove at the bottom, and you can plug it into his arm. So now he's armed up with a weapon, which is actually pretty cool. And I gotta say, that's pretty cool how they managed to give a minicon a weapon. Like, not many minicons can do this. He's pretty cool, honestly, and definitely one of the better parts of this figure. And I honestly feel like there was more ambition here than later on. We'll talk about that. I don't want to get too far ahead, but yeah, articulation for a minicon is decent. He's got some decent sculpting too. You can make out vents right here, just zooming in. You can make out some vents. There's no rotor though, which is unfortunate, but you can make out little doors with the little minicon insignia. The rotors are nicely molded, even though it's mainly lost in this neon orange plastic. But yeah, he's not really my favorite minicon. That honor, of course, goes to Overrun, but he's definitely pretty good. And this game, I think here he is next to his Wavemate Crumple Zones, and you can see they scale decently. Yeah, this makes you definitely want to collect them all. And yeah, overall, if I were to give a score to Jolt, I'd have to give him like a 7 out of 10, and he's only getting that high because, you know, he's a Micromaster. Now, with all that out of the way, on to Hotshot once again. But yeah, in all mode, he's pretty good. Does he have his problems? Yes. I don't know why they couldn't just make a hubcap right here or make a panel to cover up the head. But yeah, that's just pretty much it for this guy in this mode. Not much else I could say. For the sake of comparison, here he is next to his Wavemate Cyclonus, Cybertron Runabout, and Red Alert. And you can see he really scales well with the other toys from this line. Anyway, on to robot mode. Transformation for Hotshot is honestly kind of underwhelming, and I'll be honest, it doesn't feel like we've really accomplished anything. Now, the reason for this is because of the complaints from parents and mostly soccer moms about, how hard the transformations were in Beast Wars, Beast Machines, and RID. And while I can kind of understand that for maybe like Beast Machines and Beast Wars, RID, really? People had trouble with Ruination? But anyway, yeah, it doesn't really feel like we got anywhere with this transformation. And I don't have a problem with simple transformations, don't get me wrong. It's just, you gotta do something interesting with it. And here, I feel like, where's the rest of it? Because honestly, in robot mode, there isn't much going on outside of what you see. Taking a look at the molding, mainly, it's mostly drowned out by the obnoxiously highlighter like yellow, which I said was fine in vehicle mode, but in robot mode, it definitely drowns out a lot of the detailing. And it's not even like that. There's also the red right here, also drowns out a lot. It's just like not a very interesting figure to look at. Hell, taking a look at a head sculpt, it looks more like a phase of Mr. Incredible becoming uncanny than it does an actual action figure. They fixed this with the Power Links one, I'll give them that, but you also lost a little bit of playability in this mode. As for playability, he does have a few extra features. The first one being that his visor can move down, and I actually like this one. It's pretty cool, it's not intrusive, and it does cover off that weird looking face. As for other gimmicks in this mode, of course, he has 2 spots on his shoulders for minicons and 1 on the back, which we will get to later on. As for accessories in this mode, Hotshot does still come with his engine block. Now, you'd think this would be his weapon or gun, kind of like how it was used in the show. But unfortunately, he cannot even hold it. It will sit there, but that's barely counting, as there are no pegs for it to kick in. It can be used as a minicon, but the only real figure it's been able to work on was Cyclonus. No, what you're really supposed to do with this is take it right here. It's supposed to be armor, and really? Honestly, this is just a waste of budget, and I know that they wanted to go into a more simplistic route, but at least give him a gun. Oh, thank God for Overrun, because this figure desperately needs a weapon. Either way, I can give this figure this. Unlike half of Armada, it can actually hold stuff since it has 5mm pegs. And yes, I know that doesn't really sound like much of a complaint, but considering how half of Armada's figures couldn't even hold any weapons, mainly like Sideways, Thrust, Demolisher, even Cyclonus, and considering how much they advertised the Skyboom Shield, the Requiem Blaster, and the Star Saber, kinda feels like an oversight from the designers. Now, moving on to articulation, this is where I feel like the simplification of these figures definitely went overboard. I mean, granted, articulation doesn't really make a good figure, especially in the case of Armada. I mean, look at Sideways. I mean, he's a brick, yet he's still awesome. Well, I think it is they compensate with stuff. With Sideways, it's usually like the Headmaster gimmick and the faction changing. For Hotshot, well, there's not really enough here to justify it. I mean, for Christ's sake, it even gets outclassed by figures that came out years earlier. As for Hotshot, his shoulders move out this far, and really they can't even come this close because then he looks like a complete jackass. His arms, because of transformation, can move this way, but really, I hate to borrow from TJ Omega, but really, it looks like something that would happen if I took a sword to him. Yeah! See what I mean? As for the legs, they're actually pretty well ranged for the time. I mean, they can move out this far, move out this far back. There's swivels at the legs, and he's got a decent knee joint for a time. And I guess if you want to count for transformation, his feet can kind of move. Unfortunately, though, because of something we'll get to later, he has no neck articulation, which I can take or leave it in this line, especially considering these figures. But yeah, in terms of articulation, this guy's pretty lacking, even for Armada. I think he only slightly beats out Sideswipe by having knees. But yeah, Other than that, you can really take it or leave it here, because back then, well, today articulation is a gold standard. Like, every figure has to have a waist or ankle tilts or even wrists on some figures. Back then, it was a take it or leave it deal because of the transformation, which I kind of feel like is the problem with this figure. This guy's transformation really kind of decimates this robot mode. I mean, you can't even put the arms in straight. I mean, just take a look at the prototype figure. Bring this guy off to the side, and as you can see with the prototype, this guy was going to transform essentially the same way. Well, they clearly had to work out a few things like the chest, but look at the shoulders, look at the legs. I know the legs are essentially the same, but like with the shoulders, you could definitely get some decent poses, and I feel like the transformation would have also been way more interesting, honestly, than what we have here. Honestly, I don't know what to say, but other than that, there's also another reason why the gimmick doesn't work, and we'll finally get to that. Now, turning Hotshot around, we'll bring in Jolt, and you can see there's a Minicon port right on his backside, and just by sticking the tail end of Jolt right here, you can do it on this side, but the gimmick won't activate. Also, I've tried it with the engine block, and the gimmick only activates really on Cyclonus when you use this thing, so at least you get 2 Minicons for free. One's a worthless waste of budget, but anyway, just stick it right here. And just, it'll go up and fire like so. And honestly, I'm not as offended as many people are. I know people like to complain about the Axel Zuka scene. It's the reason why his head doesn't work. It's the reason why his neck doesn't work. And that gimmicks are evil. But really, again, bring back in the prototype, you can see that this gimmick was pretty well baked into the final product. It's only that the shoulders were going to be better on that version. And yeah, I really don't blame the gimmick for this mode. But yeah, anyway, for some size comparisons, here he is with Runabout, Cyclonus, Red Alert, and Sideways. Now, overall, while I don't hate this figure, I can definitely understand the problems. But really, I know what you're asking. What is the point of this video? Why did I spend all this time talking about a figure that's been bashed, bruised, and overall just not liked for decades at this point? Well, it's just to prove a point that, like, a lot of Armada figures have the same problems, and most of them can be routed back to this guy. I mean, Sideswipe's lack of articulation and weird proportions, that comes back to here. Scavenger's ridiculous gimmick that ruins everything, again, here. A transformation that doesn't do enough, and as a result, the robot mode suffers. It all comes back to here. What else can I say about any other figure? Really, even some of the better figures, like, they still have problems that just come back to this. Honestly, what else is there I can really say, you know? There's only so much you can say about a figure, or even a toy line in general, without coming off as narcissistic. But yeah, honestly, while I can't shift all the blame on Aaron Archer, I can definitely say there were some skewed priorities here. And if the transformation was more interesting, I can definitely see this figure being liked a lot more, especially if it had those better shoulders. But yeah, that's pretty much it with Hotshot. Honestly, you know, I'm not angry at this figure, I'm just more disappointed. And I'm glad this is honestly the lowest that Armada got. I mean, hell, even Sideswipe would be decent if they just spent a little time working on him instead of him coming kinda half-baked. But yeah. Now, overall with these figures, honestly, I'm kinda split. While Jolt's awesome, Hotshot definitely gives a lot to desire. And really, I can only really give this set like a 3 out of 10. It's definitely not the worst, but I'd still argue it's worse than Sideswipe. But on the plus side, that's just how it goes sometimes. Sometimes there's going to be those little hurdles in a toy line that they have to overcome. And considering this guy was one of the first figures released, I can definitely say they definitely improved as they went on. I mean, look at Demolisher, look at Cyclonus. This is more of a cautionary tale of what happens when you oversimplify something too much and end up with skewed priorities. Would I like to see this figure redone? Hell yeah. Thank God it's coming in Legacy. But yeah, I'm really not that mad about this figure. More just disappointed. I mean, well, for Christ's sake, Jolt has more going on this guy right here. But yeah, that's about it for me. This is Master Farr sign off, and I will see you next time.